Hello again, gamers. Welcome back to the Board Game Captain. I'm the Board Game Captain,
I'm Lynn.
and today we're going to be previewing and showing you how to play Be Lives, We Will Only Know Summer. Now, this is a game who is going to have an upcoming Kickstarter from Hit 'em with a Shoe Games, and it was designed by Matt Shoemaker. So he lent us this copy to be able to check it out and do this preview video for it. And he told us he's also going to send us a final copy when it gets made so we can do a full review for it. So we've had a few games of it, and we're going to take you to the table right now. I'm not going to show you lots of the components like I usually do because they're subject to change. He told me specifically the artwork on the cards, which is all the same for all the cards right now, is going to change. There's going to be a lot more varied artwork. Most of the rest should be okay, like this should be the cover picture, but just in case, I'm not going to spend a whole lot of time showing you all the components. Instead, we're going to go right to the table, we're going to run you through a few turns, and show you how this game plays, and then Lynn and I are going to come back and we're going to talk about how this game feels, we're going to talk about who we're going to recommend this game to, who we think should back this Kickstarter, or buy it if they see it in the store once it's in stores. So, without any further ado, let's head over. Okay, so here we can see a two-player game of Be Lives, We Will Only Know Summer setup. So the first thing you got to do when you set up is you got to get your player board out. This is very important because this is where most of the worker placement aspect of the game is, as well as the tracks for tracking the size of your hive and your disease. You place the Varroamite marker over here on the disease track, starting just before the track to help you track the disease in your hive. And you place a marker here on the 11 space to show you currently have a size of 10. And that is very important for seeing how many eggs are laying in your hive every year, as well as keeping track of your resources in the space that they take up, things like pollen, honey, and water. In addition, you have 3 bees starting on your board, and the rest of the bees are placed off to the side, and you have to choose a starting queen. Now, I have chosen the swarm queen, which allows me to swarm more easily, which is good because in the spring, it is the most cost-effective way to get points, whereas Lynn has chosen the clean queen, because she helps to prevent disease. It allows her Varroamite marker to start standing on its end, which you can see over there on her board, and the first time she would take disease, instead of moving it up, she will just lay it down, and at the beginning of every round, she can stand it up. We also start with one bloom tile, which are the green tiles here, with our hive marker placed on it. There are different colors of tiles in this bag here, which we will draw as we scout out the other areas around our area. We place out the scoreboard, the wild hive strength board, so we can keep track of wild hives once they're created, as well as this board that keeps track of the months, which are the turns. We go through 9 months before having to survive the 3 months of winter, and we deal up the first card from the spring deck. You have the spring, summer, and autumn deck, to represent the event for the month of March. Now, the event we got was the beginning of the flow. Now, this artwork is not final. They all have, I think, the same artwork on them now, but they will be different, as I understand it, in the production copy. So the effect of the beginning of the flow is that bloom tiles, which is the one we started with, will provide an additional honey when foraged. So that makes them incredibly valuable for the purposes of foraging. So our starting tile is going to be very, very useful for the month of March. Now, Lynn took the starting player token. So, Lynn, would you like to take the first turn?
Yes, I am going to forage the bloom tile.
So now foraging causes her to get a disease, but again, because she has a cleanly queen, she just lays her Varroamite marker down. She can take up to 6 honey because of the fact that this effect is in play, and normally you could get up to 5 honey for a bloom tile. So you did take the full 6, and you can take up to 5 pollen. How much pollen are you taking?
I'm taking 3.
Okay, 3 pollen. So now you don't have to take the full amount. You can take less. And that is very useful and very valuable. So now, again, for the first month of spring here, we skip all the beginning of the turn right up to the player actions. We will be taking a full turn, as described here on the cheat sheet, which is very handy, during the second month, which is April, which we will definitely be showing you. So for my first turn, what I would like to do is scout. So I'm going to place a scout there, and then I give a quick mix up to this bag here, And I reach in and I pull out a random, I'm going to scout this area here right next to my hive, and I pull out a harvest tile. The harvest tile is orange, whereas the bloom tile was green. And now the harvest tile isn't very valuable in the spring, but way later on, come autumn, it's going to be the most valuable tile. So it's not bad to have it there for later. And that's it for my action. What are you doing?
I am going to spend 2 honey to
Build?
build.
Fair enough. I am going to harvest my bloom tile. So, and I am going to do, I'm going to take the, let's see, 1, 2, 3, 4. I'm going to take 6 honey. And I am going to, there we go. And I'm going to take 4 of the pollen. There we go. Okay. And that's it for my action.
I'm going to scout.
Okay. Let's see what you get.
Move your disease.
Oh, yes, thank you. I have to move my disease for harvesting every time
Going to scout right in front.
Ooh, a wet tile. Now, that one is blue and is useful year-round because while year-round it only provides a bit of honey and pollen, it is the only tile that can provide water, and water is very important if you get any random event that causes overheating because you need the water to cool down your hive. So actually, that's an incredibly useful tile to have right next to her hive there. That's very good. So for my final one, I think I would, let me see here. I think I also would like to build. So I'm going to go to build. I'm going to spend 2 honey. And I also am going to increase the size of my hive. Okay, so now at this point we are out of bees. So once everybody is out of bees, we go on to the next part of the turn, which is we are going to move the first player marker to the next player around the table. We return all of our workers to our hive. And then if there were wild hives out there, we would return their worker tokens back to to the supply over here, but there are no wild hives yet. So now we're going to move on to the beginning of the next turn. So the first thing we do is we find our number of available eggs, and the way you do that is if you keep your resources on all of your hive spaces, you just look for the empty spaces. It's the easiest way we've found to do it. So I have 3 eggs available in my hive. What have you got?
I have 4.
You have 4. Okay, fair enough. So then the next thing we do is we have to feed our bees. Now it's 1 honey per 2 bees. So I have 3 bees. It requires 2 honey for me. You also needed 2 honey. Now our bees are fed and none of them starved to death, and that's a good thing. The next thing we do is we can hatch new bees based on the number of eggs we had just counted up, 3 for me, 4 for Lynn, and it costs 1 pollen for each new bee we hatch. So I'm going to hatch 3 bees, and I get rid of 3 pollen. At which point we are going to check for swarming. And for the purposes of swarming, we have to check our number on our highest area here. If we beat the number, in my case for a swarm queen, I have to beat 3, which I definitely have more than 3. And for Lynn, your number is 6. Do you have more than 6?
No.
So Lynn will not swarm, but I will. So what's going to happen is, for the purposes of my swarming, I lose half of my bees rounded down, so I have a total of 6. I lose 3 bees, and they are going to fly over and start a wild hive. So I take them off. I also lose half of my honey, so I lose 1 honey. Now, my wild hive is going to be placed in an adjacent, up to 3 spaces away, but on another space. So it's going to be placed in this adjacent space. It's the only one I have available to swarm to, so I'm going to place it there. And then I can choose to move to take over that hive or stay in the one I am in. I'm going to stay in the one I'm in, which will also allow me to change out the type of queen I have. So now I would like to switch the type of queen I have. I'm going to switch to a productive queen, but she will start, I have to turn this tile so that the little larva is facing the pause symbol, because I will not get to breed on my next breed phase. During my next hatch phase, it will, instead of breeding, I will turn it to the play symbol. So, but doing this would also reduce my disease by half, rounded down. Now, I've only got one, so it's not really going to reduce anything. But in the spring, swarming is worth 5 points, which is huge.
That's my color.
Oh, excuse me, wrong one. Swarming is worth 5 points, which is really huge. Now, 3 bees went off to this new hive, so I have to set its strength at 3, which I'm going to place one of its tokens here on the meter to keep track of that hive's strength. Now, during the summer and the autumn, this hive will start doing its own things, but they don't do anything during the spring. It's still rather lethargic. It's in a bit of torpor after the winter. So the wild hives will be inactive during the spring. So that is it, though, for the swarm. My swarm is all done. Now, we're going to reveal the next event card and see what we get. The new event is Perfect Weather. On the first turn of this month, each player immediately places a wild hive within 3 tiles of their hive with a strength token of 2 plus the current game year. If there are no legal placements within 3 tiles, the players, then no wild hive is placed. Now, I have no legal place to place it, but Lynn does. So she will have to put a wild hive adjacent to her there on the wet space. And that one will start at strength 3. Okay, so there are 2 wild hives out there. So then we move on to our turns, our actions. So it is my turn to take an action. So the first thing I would like to do is I would like to scout, and I'm going to scout here. I want to get another tile out there, something good, hopefully. I got a wilt tile, so that will be very valuable come summer. So that's not too bad. What do you want to do? Well, you have a lot of actions you can take this round with all those bees.
I would like to rob that wild hive.
Ooh, how many bees are you sending at it?
3.
Okay, so Lynn is going to send 3 bees at the wild hive, which means she rolls one of the 4-sided dice. She can get up to strength 3 on this robbing attempt because, so she got the 3 because she rolled a 4, which means she gets 3 because your maximum is the number of bees you sent there. So that is enough to completely destroy that hive since it's only a strength 3 hive. She will steal 3 honey. She will also reduce its strength by 3, which destroys it. That will also give her 2 victory points for destroying a wild hive. So she got the 2 victory points, which was for destroying the wild hive. But in addition, you always get a disease for either foraging or robbing. So she will lay her disease token down. But now she's on the scoreboard, so that is very good. So now it is my turn, and I would like to forage. I'm going to forage here and take another disease, but I will get quite a lot of stuff for my foraging. So I'm going to take 5 of the honey, which is back to its normal amount for foraging on a balloon tile. And I will also take, I'm going to take 4. No, I'm going to take 3. I'm going to take 3 for the pollen. There we go. Okay, so that is it for my turn. So, Lynn, what will you do?
I'm going to build.
Fair enough. I accidentally placed one from my supply instead of over here. I was confused from it. I had too many bees. For my final action, I am going to take a clean action. So for when you take a clean action, you reduce your disease by 1 and get to stand it up. And the next time you would take a disease, you just lay it down, similar to having the cleanly queen. And that's my final action. I'm out of bees, so you can take your last 2.
I am going to
build again.
One more time.
Wow, you got a big hive.
I am going to forage.
Okay. And get yourself tons of honey, and so you're taking a full 5 honey.
Taking a full 5.
How much pollen are you going to take? For
I'm
more
only
bees?
going to take 1 pollen.
Okay, so you're trying to restrict your hive growth. You're trying to get
Yes.
maximum size. Okay, so at which point we are done with our actions because we are out of bees. Again, we are for the spring. We skip the hive actions of the wild hive, but if we weren't, if it were summer, what happens is after all the players have taken one action, you have a checklist for the AI of the wild hives that is different for each of the months, and you go down the checklist and see, can it do this? If it does, it does it. If not, it moves on to the next thing. And they usually include things like if it's overheating, they would go to try to forage on water tiles. Otherwise, they might try to rob one of your hives, but they can only rob a hive once. So after they do that, they don't do it again. And then they would look to just forage other tiles, which they don't actually get resources. They just put one of their tokens on it so that you can't forage it. So now, once we're done with all of our actions for this round, we're going to move the first player token back to Lynn. We're going to return all our workers back to our hive. So I take my 3 back. Lynn takes her a lot back over there. Then if there were wild tokens out, we would remove them, but there are not. So then we have to find out our current number of eggs. Now I have 1 egg, and but it doesn't matter because I can't breed this round.
I have 6.
Okay, so now being that I cannot breed, the next thing we do though is we have to feed our bees. So I feed with 2 honey. I feed my 3 bees.
I need 3 honey because I have 6 bees.
Okay, and then now during the phase here where we would hatch our eggs, I just turn this to the play sign so that next time I can breed. And then what are you going to do?
I'm going to get 1 more bee.
1 more bee. Okay, at which point we are going to reveal the event card for May, which the event card for May is an early start. Wax requires 1 less honey to produce. Brooding requires 1 pollen for 2 broods rounded up instead of 1 pollen per brood. And when you scout, you roll a die, and on a 5 or a 6, you discover a new wild hive with 3 strength on that tile. So there's a lot of alterations going to be for May here. And we're going to continue on and doing it this way. Now you get your victory points by swarming. 5 points in the spring, 3 points in the summer, and 2 points in the autumn for swarming. And you can also get victory points by fending off when wild hives or other hives attack you. If you can stop them from stealing any honey, you can get 2 victory points. You can stop them either by taking an action to put bees in defense position. Each bee you have there will stop them from stealing 1 honey from you. Or you can discard or sacrifice a bee from your main hive, or sacrifice a bee from your defense position. If you sacrifice a bee from your defense position, it will now block them from stealing 2 honey and cause the attacking hive to lose 2 strength in the case of a wild hive. In addition, if you do all of this and stop them from stealing any honey, you will gain 2 victory points. In addition, if you manage to destroy a wild hive, you will gain 2 victory points, whether you did it by defending and discarding bees, or if you did it by robbing them like Lynn did, and there got those 2 victory points. In addition to that, if you successfully rob another player's hive and get at least half the amount of honey as the number of bees you started with, you will gain 2 victory points that way also. And if at the end of the game, if your hive can survive the winter, which the way that goes is you go through the 3 months of the winter, and during the 3 months of the winter, you have to deduct honey for all the bees you have in your hive during that month, and as long as none of them are starving, and as long as you still have some bees left at the end of the 3 months of winter, you get a point for every honey and every bee you have, and whoever has the highest points at the end of Bee Lives, We Will Only Know Summer, wins the game. So now we're going to head back to the table, and we're going to talk about how this game feels. Okay, welcome back. So that was how you play a game of Bee Lives. We Will Only Know Summer. Now, we're going to talk about some of the things we like about this game and some of the things we don't like about this game. And we're going to talk about who we recommend this game to and who should back it or buy it if you're watching this once it's on store shelves. And we're not going to give it a full number rating because it is in its pre-production state, and there is a lot that goes into, one, the differences that are going to be in the production, but also the rules themselves are going to be cleaned up a lot, and based on feedback during the campaign, the designer Matt Shoemaker might decide to change some of the rules or add in some optional play styles. There's already an option. There's already two optional play modes in here aside from the basic one. There's a solo mode and a larger game mode. He might add in others, which would address some of these issues that we have. So take everything we say that's negative with a grain of salt, because if after making this video he addresses these during the campaign, they will no longer be valid criticisms. But as it stands right now, we're going to tell you what we think might need improvement or what we think is awesome. So let's start with the negative stuff so we can end on the positive stuff. Does that sound reasonable?
Okay.
All right. So my biggest negative I have is the mechanics for robbing. So there is the ability for you to rob the wild hives, which are the AI-controlled hives out there, for the wild hives to rob each other, or for you to rob other players, and also, of course, you to be robbed by all of these things. Now, my biggest criticism is not how that works, it's the fact that there's too much variety in the way that each of those scenarios works, in my opinion. I have an issue with the fact that the wild hives, when they rob you, use a 6-sided die, while you, when you rob anyone else, use a 4-sided die. I think it should all be standardized. It caused, basically through both games, we constantly had to check back for between the two games we played on, I'm robbing a wild hive this time. Okay, what do I need to do? Because of how it's not standardized. So I would really like to see, as if he does revisions during the campaign, I would like to see him merge those 3 types of robbings into one. The easiest way to do that, I think, would be that everybody uses a 4-sided die, or everybody uses a 6-sided die, but not the back and forth. Also, because of how your strength when robbing and defending is always based on how many bees you have available to rob or defend, but the wild hives are just based on their current strength. Stronger wild hives using a 6-sided die can be incredibly devastating and steal a lot of honey, which again is why I think they should use a 4-sided die. Mm-hmm. So that's my biggest criticism with it. And actually, generally speaking, it's just one part of the game, but it's one part of the game that I think needs to be streamlined, and the different versions of robbing, I think, need to be brought in line with each other. What do you think about that?
Well, you're the one that read the rules, and I just kind of did what you told me to when I was like, I want to rob this, and you would just say, okay, roll this die. So, I mean, I agree that it shouldn't be completely different, but, I mean, since I wasn't reading the rules and trying to remember them, it didn't affect me all too much.
So what do you have any negatives you want to address?
I think the game is too long.
Okay.
Is my negative.
Now, you had talked about this while we were playing the 2 times we played, that you felt it went too long for what it was. And I could understand. I don't fully agree with you on that. Actually, I didn't think it was too bad, at least at 2 players, though it does say that they expect it to be around half an hour per player, and I can see that. Not the first game. When you're first learning, it's going to be a bit longer. But once you get into it, once you learn and you've played at least one game, it's probably going to be about half an hour per player, and that can be a bit long. Mm-hmm. So now they already have an alternate rule set in here for longer games. If you really like to play longer games, I'm sure there's people who are going to really like to play longer games. I think the length of the standard game is okay. Lynn thinks it's too long. People have different opinions. I'm sure there's people who want it even longer and would like that alternate longer rule version that's in here. But I would love to see then, that would really fix it, is a alternate rule version in here for a shorter game. Mm-hmm. And I've actually thought of some ways that you could do this. So Matt, if you're listening, I think it'd be great to do, maybe you start with a few more tiles on the board, so there's some more variety out there rather than just one per player. You start with a little bit larger hive size and a few more workers, but then just do 1 turn per season instead of 1 turn per month, and only have to survive 1 turn of the winter as well, and then see who has the highest points. It would be a much quicker, truncated version of the game, and that would be good for people who wanted a shorter experience. I mean, would that fix it for you?
Yeah, I think it would. It's just, by by the time we get to like midway through summer, I'm just like
You're getting a little
I'm getting a little just tired of doing the same things and getting beaten down by the wild hives over and over.
Which again addresses my one issue is that I think the way the wild hives attack you is, especially with medium to high strength wild hives, is a bit too powerful. I don't like they use the D6. So okay, so there's some of our 2 cents on things we would do to improve the game, on things that we don't like. But now let's talk about some positive things. So one thing is, this is interesting because this is meant to be okay, you do some tile laying when you're exploring, but for the most part, you have your own personal worker placement board to control your bees, and then you're going out to collect resources. It's meant to, this feels like a higher end of middleweight to a lower end of heavyweight worker placement and resource management, which is something that you don't see too many games in that kind of weight class with these sort of mechanics, which is sort of interesting. It's doing something different, and I like that. I like the innovation here. I like the fact that they went for a full-on simulation. That Matt Shoemaker, when he was designing this, he wasn't like, oh, let me make a worker placement game. He was like, let me make a game that helps you to simulate doing all the things a beehive would need to do to, number one, survive, because that's most important. Number two, spread their genes by making other hives form of their own offspring, and prepare to survive the winter. And this really does that. So what about you? What are some positives you have for this game?
I really like the artwork.
I'm with you on that. The artwork that they've got on the box, and this is very much going to be what the artwork style is going to look like in the game, is really cool. It's very charming. It has this nostalgic effect. It reminds me of the old Golden books, like the covers of the Golden books when you were a kid. Like, this totally looks like it's the main character of a Golden book who was AB, and you were about to learn about their life throughout the summer or something. So what about the? I mean, I do agree with you that the artwork is very good. What else do you like about the game?
I like the worker placement.
Okay, and so the worker placement on the personal board, all that. So now, okay, so some of the mechanics in here are really interesting. I like what they're doing with it. There are some issues that I hope are addressed before this gets released. Those are some of the issues that we have. Who would we recommend this game to? So if you really want a proper simulation of controlling a beehive, because that's what this is, down to the nitty gritty. Like, if you were one of those people who back in the day, like the old video game Sim Ant, where you controlled a ant colony, this is the game for you. If that's like something you're into, if you really want to control a beehive, and down to the minutia of telling bees to go collect resources and having other bees increase the size of your hive, etc., then this is definitely the game for you. Be aware, though, this is, even though it looks like it might be a family weight game, this really isn't. This is more of kind of on the heavier side, I would say. Would you agree that it's more of like a heavyweight?
Yes, it is.
It is. So it's you have to be aware of that. This is, it looks like you could think it might be like a family weight game, and it's really not. It's definitely got more meat to it, and the length of the game definitely goes beyond that. One other thing I just wanted to address real quick is I do like it. It's something it took me 2 games to appreciate. I like the way you have to change what you're doing to get points throughout the game. Early on, it's very cost effective to get points by swarming, because you get 5 points in the spring, but that reduces to 3 points in the summer and 1 point in the fall, so it becomes nowhere near as cost effective to lose half your hive of bees in the autumn than it is in the spring. So by the time you get to autumn, it's far more cost effective to defend against raids from enemy hives and to destroy enemy hives by robbing them and killing them off. Then that becomes the main way to get points. You do have to change your strategy along the course of the game. So there you have it. That is a look at Bee Lives We Will Only Know Summer. Check it out on Kickstarter. I'm sure there's going to be lots of other videos talking about it. There are a lot of other reviewers who got copies of it. And if you enjoyed this preview video for Bee Lives, be sure to give it a like, share it on all forms of social media, and if you haven't already, please subscribe to the Board Game Kaptain. That's Kaptain spelled with a K on YouTube. And until next time, game on.